It was just past midnight when I found myself alone downstairs, folding laundry in the dim light of the kitchen. The rest of the house was asleep. My husband Mark had gone to bed hours earlier, and the only sound was the low hum of the washing machine. I've always had this little ritual, folding everyone's clothes neatly and placing them outside their doors. It was my way of keeping order, even on days when life felt messy. But that night, as I carried a stack of shirts up the stairs, my body was heavy with exhaustion. My eyelids drooped as I pushed open a door, certain it was the guest room. But it wasn't inside. A light flickered faintly. I froze on the threshold, realizing I had stepped into Liam's room, my 19-year-old stepson. He was sitting on the edge of his bed, shoulder slumped, his face buried in his hands. I almost backed away quietly, but then I heard him whisper to himself, his voice cracking with frustration. Why do they always laugh at me? What's wrong with me? I stood there, clutching the clean shirts, unsure if I should interrupt or pretend I hadn't seen anything at all. My first instinct was to close the door quietly and walk away, to give him the privacy he clearly needed. But something in his voice rooted me to the spot. It wasn't anger, it wasn't just teenage frustration, it was pain. Real pain. He lifted his head, and I caught a glimpse of his expression in the faint light from his desk lamp. His eyes were red, as if he'd been fighting back tears. Liam wasn't the kind of boy to cry easily. He always tried to act strong, casual, untouchable. Seeing him like this, it broke something inside me. I shifted the pile of shirts in my arms, debating whether to leave them at the door and pretend I hadn't heard anything. But then he whispered again, softer this time, almost like a confession. Maybe I'll never be enough for anyone. My heart tightened. I knew I couldn't just walk away anymore. Quietly, I stepped inside and set the laundry down on his desk. The floor creaked beneath me, and Liam's head jerked up. His eyes widened when he saw me there. Sorry, I didn't mean to. I began, my voice low, but he cut me off, his cheeks flushing. Did you hear that? He asked, his voice shaky. The silence stretched between us, heavy and fragile, like glass about to break. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. I didn't mean to overhear. But yes, I did. Liam's shoulders stiffened. For a moment, I thought he would shut down completely, hide behind the mask he always wore. But instead, he let out a shaky laugh, bitter and short. You probably think I'm pathetic, he muttered, looking away. No, I said softly, moving a little closer, but keeping my distance. I think you're hurting. And that's not pathetic. He rubbed his palms together, restless, his eyes fixed on the floor. It's just, people don't take me seriously. My friends joke about me girls. They say things that stick. I try to laugh it off, but every word cuts deeper than I want to admit. His voice cracked at the end, and suddenly, I saw him not as the tall, almost grown man he was, but as a boy, carrying a weight far too heavy for his age. Liam, I whispered, there is nothing wrong with you. People can be cruel, but that doesn't make their words true. For the first time that night, he met my eyes. There was vulnerability there, raw and unguarded. Then why does it feel like I'm never enough? I wanted to reach out to ease that ache somehow, but I stopped myself. Instead, I said gently, "Sometimes the problem isn't you, Liam. Sometimes it's the way the world teaches us to measure ourselves." The room fell quiet again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was fragile, yes, but filled with the possibility of understanding. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The quiet hum of the washing machine downstairs was the only sound that filled the silence. I could see Liam struggling, his jaw tight, his hands clenched, as if holding back everything he wanted to say. Finally, he exhaled and whispered, "You're the first person who's ever listened without laughing." Something in his words pierced me deeply. I sat down carefully on the edge of his chair, close enough to show I was there for him, but not too close to cross a line. "Everyone deserves to be heard, Liam, especially you." His eyes glistened, though he blinked quickly to hide it. "Sometimes I feel invisible. Like no matter what I do, I'll never measure up. Not to my dad, not to my friends, not to anyone." I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice. "You don't have to measure up to anyone. You only have to be you. And that's enough." For the first time, a faint smile tugged at his lips. It wasn't much, but it was real. He nodded slowly, like he wanted to believe me, but didn't know how. The air between us shifted warmer, gentler. It wasn't about answers or solutions anymore. It was about being seen. Truly seen. I stood sensing that staying longer might blur lines we couldn't take back. "It's late. Try to get some sleep," I said softly. Liam's voice followed me as I reached the door. "Thank you for not walking away." I paused, my hand on the doorknob, my chest tightening. "I never will," I whispered before slipping out into the hallway. The hallway felt colder as I closed Liam's door behind me. My heart was still racing, not from fear, but from the weight of what had just happened. It wasn't wrong, not exactly, but it wasn't simple either. As I picked up the basket of folded laundry and tiptoed toward the other rooms, a sound made me freeze. A door creaked open down the hall. "Mark?" He stood there, half asleep, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing up this late?" he asked, his voice thick with drowsiness. I forced a smile, clutching the basket tightly to my chest. "Just finishing the laundry. I didn't want it sitting in the machine all night." He yawned and nodded slowly, not suspecting anything. "You work too hard," he murmured, before disappearing back into our bedroom. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My knees felt weak, and I leaned against the wall for a moment, steadying myself. From behind Liam's door came the faintest sound, a sigh, almost a whisper. Relief, maybe, or gratitude. But in that instant, I realized how thin the walls of this house really were, and how easily a secret once formed could slip through the cracks. That night, I lay in bed beside Mark, listening to his steady breathing. He drifted easily into sleep, but my mind refused to rest. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Liam's face, vulnerable, searching, grateful. I told myself it was nothing more than compassion, that I had only been there to comfort him. But deep down, I knew the connection we had shared. was more complicated than that. It wasn't romantic, and yet it wasn't something I could ignore either. The next morning, Liam avoided my eyes at breakfast, speaking only when necessary. But when our gazes did meet, even for a brief second, there was something unspoken between us. A promise, or maybe a warning. Mark chatted casually about his day ahead, oblivious to the storm, quietly building in the very walls of his home. I smiled, nodded, and poured the coffee, all the while wondering how long we could keep walking this fragile line before something broke. Because secrets, they don't stay hidden forever.